Welcome everyone. Today we have the wonderful Minh Dang, who is the Executive Director of Survivor Alliance and who I had the great pleasure of meeting when I went to visit Nottingham Rights Lab. Lovely to see you again, Minh. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. It's so great to be here. Thanks.
Please, would you tell us a bit about yourself, where you are, and a bit about Survivor Alliance?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Minh Dang, and this is an American accent. So born and raised in California, moved to the UK in September 2017 to join the Rights Lab as a PhD student. So hopefully I'll be done next year. But then simultaneously, the Rights Lab helped me incubate and launch Survivor Alliance. So we are a not-for-profit, and our mission is to unite and empower survivors of slavery and human trafficking around the world. And really the point is to say, survivors are obviously resilient, courageous, and we have so much more to us than our trauma stories. And we think that anti-slavery interventions, policies, everything can be benefited by survivors' input.
So Minh, your PhD at Nottingham University centered around survivor wellbeing. I think this is a really interesting area to focus on and such an important one. Perhaps you could tell some of our listeners a little bit about your research and some of the conclusions that you drew.
Yeah, absolutely. So far it's clear that we're not actually studying survivor well-being. Even if we say we are, we're looking at mental health, and even then we're looking at mental illness. So I think obviously, yes, survivors of slavery have severe trauma. And I think it's important to look at the impact because that's important in survivors' recovery and healing. And at the same time, I think there can be an emphasis on mitigating symptoms and trying to eradicate an illness or disease when likely survivors are going to have to live with psychological symptoms for a while. So the study of well-being is really about the presence of positive aspects, but what I'm seeing is it's not either or. It's the presence of well-being, happiness, a purpose in life in spite of the challenges. So survivors aren't saying, when this is all gone, because there's going to be memories, there's going to be things that draw people back, but it's how can I learn to have a life that I love and is beautiful in spite of that? And I can get to a place where I can better manage or react to triggers and things that come up along the way. So what we're really seeing is that education is core to well-being. I mean, that is so clear. And it's formal education, but also education about their rights, education about, oh, I'm a human and I just get to be, or people are nice in the world. I mean, just such what we might consider basic things, but are so, so important.
Eugenie and I have had the wonderful experience of visiting a number of safe houses, and we've seen the extraordinary work that these safe houses do. And a lot of that is around rehabilitation and mental health. But what more can the government do to focus on this mental health aspect within survivors?
Yeah, I think, as all human beings, we can think of mental health in a very compartmentalized way, but it's about our whole lives, right? Our mind, our feeling state, our desire to live, our purpose in life, that all is included in mental health. And so I think what the government could do is absolutely emphasize professional mental health support. Right now, there is not enough trained mental health providers who have in-depth knowledge of working with survivors of trauma. It's a very unique thing and it's challenging. So that we need more of. Secondly, I would say to encourage people who are running the safe houses and service provision to think about non-traditional mental health support, right? So survivors who tend to be in asylum seeking houses, they will say, if I just had more to do, that would help my mental health. I don't even need a therapist or a counselor. I just need the ability to go to school. I would need the ability to go to work, just something like we all need something to occupy us sometimes, right? So I think finding ways to support a broader sense of purpose and joy in life, rather than this, like, I'm just waiting for my life to begin.
Right. So it's kind of like alongside the work that already some NGOs are doing in safe houses is having like a proper system of mental health, research and practitioners who can actually come in and support, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
how many survivors would you say that the Survivor Alliance sort of works with? I don't know if you can put a number on it.
Yeah, I can close, I think. So we have 230 members worldwide. We, of course, it varies how much we work with each individual. In the UK, we have over 50. And because we have a base here in the UK, we are more in touch with them. And when we say work with, we don't do direct service provision, but that's engaging in leadership development, in workshops, in consulting with organizations on survivor input, and then just general community building. People, I think, also as in mental health intervention, survivors building community with one another is huge. Just to know that you're not alone and somebody else has gone through this has clearly been beneficial to our members.
Yeah, it's such a good point, actually. I think Jules and I have learned that on this journey, is that when the survivor voice is so important, and when you're talking to, as you say, giving survivor input to all these governments and NGOs, that it needs to be the focus, but also
Yeah.
having that network of support, like you say, it's so important, the work you do, Min, I can't tell you.
Thank you.
Min, I know that you've been planning a wonderful survivor congress. And unfortunately, like many things, COVID has slightly interrupted your plans, but it'd be wonderful if you could tell our listeners about what you're planning for either later this year or next year.
Absolutely. So the World Congress is to bring survivors from around the world together to really learn about survivor movements in our different geographic regions. So we're thinking that survivor community is important, not just in your own local geographic location, but across countries, because, right, we know that there is an element of transnational movement. So part of it is building those relationships so that survivors can know about each other. And the other is really for us to develop what are common campaigns, issues that are clearly facing survivors around the world. Now, our Congress won't be able to bring too many together because it's quite expensive, but the idea is we would bring folks that Survivor Alliance is already engaged with, and that a lot of what we've been doing is uplifting emerging leaders. So there's some people who are very well known and public, but we want to give the opportunity to new and emerging leaders. And then the second part of the World Congress, which I'm really excited about, is to bring allies and survivors together. Because I think sometimes it's with issues of race, LGBT, any sort of social divide, it's bringing people together to just see that we're all human, right? And so having allies and survivors work together on a project, whether that's dreaming about the end of slavery, what needs to happen. I think when you work on a common purpose, you kind of forget, oh, you're a survivor, I'm not a survivor. You are from poor rural places and I, am wealthy or whatever it is. So I think that aspect helps survivors, but also educates allies in a way that's not like you're doing this wrong. And so that's the second half of the Congress that we're really hoping to bring to the table.
We can't wait to be a part of it and support you when it happens.
Thank you.
How do you connect with your survivor? Like, how would someone know that Survivor Alliance is doing all that they're doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do a lot around word of mouth because I think the survivors referral is it's like a token of trust, right? For a survivor to give us their seal of approval to refer somebody else is just, I can't even tell you how honored I feel by that. And so, aside from that, we broadcast it to NGOs in the world. We have relationships with great partners like you and Freedom Fund and other international organizations that then spread the word out about us. When we first started, we did more sort of public outreach events, having a booth at a community event. We also just found out that we're official partners of the Robin Hood Half Marathon. And so yeah, we'll get a booth in the marquee. So we try and do larger community events, but we already have plenty of folks to support. And so although we're welcoming of all, we're not desperately trying to, grow too quickly.
And one more question, because I just feel like I can talk to you for hours now, but
Yeah.
when you say, it's about, with the World Congress, it's about sort of bringing up voices that haven't maybe had the opportunity to talk about their stories. I think Jules and I have found over the years that you have to be so careful with, asking questions or being too forceful, because obviously it has to come from a survivor to really want to make that moment.
Yeah.
Like, I loved your TED talk. I thought that was
Thank you.
amazing. And everyone should watch it. But how do you sort of get people to sort of bring their voices up?
Yeah. So I think what's important is that we ask things that feel relevant to people, and then that gives them the opportunity to share what of their story matters to them most. So if we say things like, what do you think the government should be doing? Then people will generally share the part of their story that relates to either a good thing that the government did or something that they wish could have gone better, right? So we try and focus the framing of it not just on, well, tell us what happened to you, but more from your lived experience, what recommendations would you give on mental health? So then people might say, well, I never got counseling and I really needed it because I had all these symptoms and blah, blah, blah. So I think really it's that, and then putting survivors together, just watching another survivor have their voice resonate or heard, I think can inspire people, and then they can say, oh wow, if she can do it and I think she's more shy like me, then maybe I can do it. Providing those small, like lower risk opportunities to share what they want and to know that it's okay. And lastly, I'll just say one of the things we've been able to do is provide opportunities for people to be anonymous and share their voice. So that's why the Congress will have a survivor only time, and then when they know it's allies and survivors, they can decide what they want to share just to a group of survivors versus allies.
Very, very good. Okay, thank you.
Min, what led you to follow this path and this line of work and to write your PhD on survivor wellbeing?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I've actually had to quite think about it deeply, because there was a moment where I was going to leave this path. And I think it's two things. So one is that I gained a lot from learning that people will fight alongside you for what they care about. That's actually what led me to be able to extricate myself from my abusive birth family. Was I started learning about other things, and I thought, wow, people fight for others' rights. Like, I didn't know, I had this concept of like, it's me against the world, right? So to see voices coming together, I saw and felt the power of that. And then the second thing is, unfortunately feel alone a lot. And part of my work is to create the world that I want to live in. I want to bring up survivor brothers and sisters so that I have them around me, and they are the ones who I think get me on a day-to-day in ways that others can't. And I have plenty of friends who are non-survivors, but I think there's always a missing piece if I don't have people who can really get me in certain times. So it's been a lot about creating the world that I want for myself, but then of course sharing that and knowing that I probably am not the only one who wants that world and could benefit from that world.
It's been a real theme throughout these conversations that Eugenie and I have been having. And for me, one of the biggest takeaways is the power of community. Mm-hmm. And I think COVID especially has reminded us all how powerful that sense of community can be.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think also what you're doing, Min, like, it's so important, like kindness as well. Like, Jules, like, we've been talking about that a lot recently. It's just, bringing people together to want to create a world that you want to live in, to be kind, so that we can all live in this lovely world. So yeah, I think you're pretty amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And Jules and I love to end on a story of hope. I mean, you're a story of hope anyway, this is what you're doing, but yeah, we'd love a little, if you have any kind of story you'd like to share.
I do. So one thing that we've been able to do is have one of our original UK members now join our staff team. And I only last night reflected on the potential sort of passing of the baton, because I've joked with this person, you know, you need to be gunning for my job. Like, you take this is going to be your organization one day. But then also, I think about my first job post enslavement and how I was lucky to find a person and an organization that had good values, that was about social justice, and that job economically gave me freedom to then have other freedoms. And so to think that now I have built a place where I can offer that to someone else and potentially be the place that then she has the launching pad for her own economic freedom. I feel so blessed to be in that place, but also that keeps me going of like, okay, all the times that we feel like maybe we're not getting anywhere, this is this moment. And I do hope she takes my job someday. So yeah.
But with us if you want.
Yeah.
Wow, Min, that's such a powerful story. And you, as Eugenie said, you really are a story of hope. You embody hope. And
Thank
to
you.
all of our listeners, thank you for listening, and thank you, Min, for sharing. The work that the Survivor Alliance does is extraordinary, and it's so important. I really encourage you all to learn more and support the Survivors Alliance as much as you can. We certainly will at the Anti-Slavery Collective.
Thanks so much.